Good. So we're talking about onboarding new community teams, development teams, right? And also some results, some lessons learned from the previous year. I gave the same talk, well, almost the same, right? Minus the results in the previous WOLFcon in Chicago last year. My name is Lee Braginski. My title is Director of Development. I am with EBSCO. My email is lbraginski@ebsco.com, right? So questions, please don't hesitate. So it is important to notice that before a team decides to become a community development team, it needs to have a conversation at the product management level, right? What is it they're going to develop? Does it make sense? Are there other institutions that may be interested in this feature, right? Or is it this institution specific feature? Obviously, since Folio is an open source system, anyone can step in at any time and develop whatever they like, right? But it doesn't make them a community team, right? So I am skipping this scenario when an institution develops something totally specific to this institution, right? So I'm not talking about that. All right, so a discussion at the product management level reveals whether the feature is needed by other institutions and where in the Folio system this feature belongs, right? And based on that, Folio Release Management Stakeholders team, consisting of various management individuals, including myself, my boss, Mark Wexler, Kalila, and Harry Kaplanian, and several other individuals, will select a host team that will be responsible for onboarding this new team. Doing it on your own, right, without the host team will be exceedingly complicated and most likely unsuccessful because there's a lot to learn, and getting familiar with the code base is not going to be easy. So it's always advisable to pair up with another team, right? So the RMS Release Management Stakeholders team will select a host team, obviously from the existing teams, right? The host team must be familiar with the Folio modules with which the new team will be modifying or working with, or adding another module, right? And also obvious that the host team must have enough bandwidth to allocate a chunk of their development cycles to the new team, to training the new people, right? It's important to notice that the new team, any team, must include the developers, Scrum Master, maybe part-time, and the product owner. Tentatively, I would call product owner the most important person, all right, on the team, because the product owner is someone who knows what's being built, all right, and scrap the tentatively part, right? Product owner is the most important person. The testers, right? On occasions, I know that Scrum Master, product owner, and tester is one person. Is it a good practice? I wouldn't recommend it, but again, I presume the team knows what it's doing, right? It is not uncommon to not have dedicated testers and have the entire team responsible for the quality of the product, So at this point, the onboarding is prepared, the new team is formed, and the host team is identified. Establish access to tools, right? There are several things that the new team will need, right? It's GitHub, where the code base resides, Jira, where we create stories, tasks, features, and so forth, and bugs, of course, right? Typically, creating stories is a job of a product owner. Creating projects and Jira boards and such, dashboards is a job of a Scrum Master. Test rail access, right? The test cases live in test rail. All right. Again, typically the tester on the team, the QA engineer on the team will be responsible for accessing test rail, but it is not uncommon to have the product owner create some test cases as well, and definitely review them when the QA engineer creates them. Slack channel, it's our common communication tool for the Folio community. All right, don't ignore it. Please create a Slack channel. Finally, Folio Confluence. There's a wealth of information there. All right, there's a lot architectural, code-based processes, schedules, milestones. So definitely need that. Architecture and code base. So now the job of the host team is to familiarize the new team with Folio technical aspects, right? Architecture, code base, database, and so forth. Can be done through various types of activities, presentation, code walkthrough, peer programming, or anything else, whatever works for the host team and the new team. Local development setup. Obviously, every developer needs to have a local setup so that they be able to develop, right? Typically, people use either IntelliJ IDEA or VS Code. Then you need to check out the code base for the modules you're working on. Please notice that creating a local environment with the entirety of Folio has not been possible. I know one person on the project. He is an EBSCO engineer, right? And he has a monstrous computer, right? Typically, when you bring up Folio, right, it takes up way too much RAM. Right, a normal development grade laptop will not be able to handle that. So that's why I'm bringing this point to your attention, that you only need to check out the code for the modules you will be working on. Read the README file, create local builds as appropriate. May need Kafka, may need database, may need Elasticsearch. All that will be done with the help of the host team. That's why I am breezing through it, not delving into details, right? So the developers on the new team will work closely with the host team, right? And the host team will advise them as appropriate. Integration environment. Each team typically here has a rancher environment. These environments are created by the Folio team that handles internal DevOps type request, called Team KitFox. Team KitFox operates on Jira tickets created in the Rancher project. Again, the host team will advise you how to do all that. But ultimately, the new team will need to have a Rancher environment where the new code will be pushed, deployed, and tested and reviewed by your product owner. And you need a CI/CD pipeline for this Rancher environment. So what do you need to be familiar with, right? There are 8 items I noted here, and there can be more because this world is big. Become familiar with the definition of done. It's on the wiki, right? Become familiar with the process of creating integration tests, right? In a few slides, I'll be talking about the lessons learned, and this integration test is one of the things that the new teams usually lack, right? This skill. So become familiar with creating integration tests using the Java Karate framework. Become familiar with the process of creating end-to-end tests, the UI tests, right? The user level tests using the Cypress JavaScript or TypeScript framework. Familiar with the process of raising, approving, and merging pull requests, right? It's important to notice that the smaller your PR is, the easier it is to review and approve, right? Again, a few slides down the road in lessons learned, we will talk about it a bit. Become familiar with the process of releasing modules, creating test cases and test rail, and identifying cases for manual and automated tests. Guys, this is another important item. Sorry. Which scenarios or test cases do you want to automate, right? And which are good enough for manual checking, right? Typically, this decision is made by the entire team, all right? And the product owner needs to approve it, needs to be aware of it, all right? Often, the product owner suggests the scenarios that need to be automated. Bugfest practices. Be prepared when issues are found in Bugfest, right? It is your responsibility to take care of them rather sooner than later. Same deal with production, right? You built it, you own it, right? If there's an issue in production, you are responsible for fixing the issues. And finally, number 8, last but not least, how to write release notes for your feature, right? It's not only the business aspect, it's also configuration, right? Are there any new environment variables, configuration points, right? Integration points, maybe permissions, right? All that needs to be in release notes. The host team will guide you, obviously, because they have done it a number of times. They will guide you. Then I put together a couple of slides on what does it mean, project complete? What that does it mean? Let's talk about it. Functionality completed as per feature description presented to the product owner or product council if needed, right? And the product owner says, yep, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what I want. Please remember that the product owner is not responsible for testing the feature. right? In other words, the product owner is not responsible for thinking of all negative test cases, edge test cases, integration test cases, and such, right? The product owner will see, yep, the workflow works correctly, and it's good enough. The product, all stories completed as per our definition of done, right? The code is merged into master. Guys, please remember, it needs to be merged before feature freeze, right? Milestone. Each flower release has a schedule on the wiki, right? And please be aware of it, that there is a schedule, and the milestones need to be met, right? The stuff needs to be in master branch before feature freeze. Of course, after feature freeze, there will be other activities. There will be bug fest, right? There will be more testing, stabilization, bug fixes, and such. Things to remember: code completed with no code smells. The Sonar Cube is responsible for giving you the list of code smells. Unit test coverage in backend and front end, at least 80%. I would say from my standpoint, 80% is way too low. I would shoot for 90%. But in our definitions of done, all right, currently we have 80%, hence I put 80% here. Carotid test created and successfully executed. Make sure the existing carotid tests work as well, right? So in other words, your code did not break the existing ones. PRs, right? PRs need to be approved by at least 2 reviewers. At least 1 reviewer should be from the team that owns the folio module where you're working, right? At the early stages of your involvement in the folio work, it'll probably be the host team, right? So each PR should be reviewed and approved by 2 reviewers, right? Approved PRs are merged into master. But that's not the end of the game, right? Fully tested. So now we're talking testing, right? Test cases are defined and created in test trail and assigned to the team. Executed manually and all pass, bug fixed if found, right? Define test scenarios for automation and create E2E test cases. In our definition of done, presently, I'm gonna let you in on a secret, right? The Cypress integration tests are marked optional but highly advisable, right? I would say they need to be created, right? They need to exist. Automation needs to exist for all new features, right? We're working hard to create as much automation as possible. And presently, we roughly at 40%, maybe 35% of all our test cases, the automation. But we're creating manual cases faster, and then we're automating them. So our coverage is actually going down a bit, all right, because we can't keep up with manual testers who create manual cases, right? So creating a new feature with manual cases and no automation will inevitably contribute in reducing our automation coverage. Please don't do it to us. All right. Okay, support and maintain your feature during bug fest and beyond, right? You built it, you own it. release notes, review and address bugs found in Bugfest or other environments, including production. So far, any questions? No questions. All right, so lessons learned. I made it like a conversation, right? So these things are both prescriptive and descriptive. So these are statements I heard from the teams, right? From the new community teams. One of them is, what do you mean it's not done? It's coded and it works, right? How do you want me to ensure quality? Well, ensuring quality means your test cases pass, right? Right. That's the quality. That's the quality assurance 101. Your test cases are created. Apologies. And pass. My apologies. Somebody is calling me on Teams. All right. Okay. Unit test coverage, both backend and front end, should be above 80%. We just talked about it. Integration tests created, right? Test cases defined in test trail, reviewed and approved by your product owner and successfully executed manually. Certain functional scenarios, or also known as user journeys, are identified as suitable for automation, and these scenarios are automated and also pass. So that's how you ensure the quality, right? Again, writing code that works for most of your positive test cases, positive scenarios, right, is not enough, right? All negative test cases need to be tested, and the test cases often include negative scenarios. Like, what do you do if the user clicks the back button twice? What happens? Right. Oh, you're brought to a screen you have no access to. That's great. All right. So, and also remember about automation. Automation is very important. Another conversation I've had with community teams is, well, we're not raising PRs because the feature is not ready. Well, guess what? When the feature is ready and you're raising a PR, it's enormous, right? Enormous. So the reviewers, remember, you need two approvals, right, from two engineers. First of all, an engineer from the host team or the team that owns the module or the area will be unwilling, right? Will be hesitant to take on the daunting task of reviewing your PR because it is enormous, right? So it's a skill to break down your feature into granular stories, right? Your product owner needs to have that skill, right? Break it down into meaningful granular stories, and raise PRs for individual stories, right? Do not wait until your feature is ready. If one of the stories enables the front end, right? The front end access to the feature whose back end is not ready, right? It could happen, right? Obviously, we don't want this to happen in the master environment. Well, use any technique you like. Use feature toggle, right? Feature toggle is a technique that shuts down an access, a UI, access to the feature that's not ready. But or be smart about it, right? Start with the back end, right? Before you create the front end access to this feature, right? Start with the back end and enable the front end at the end. So remember that reviewing and approving enormous pull requests takes weeks. It's frustrating for all parties involved, right? The community team, I'll keep calling it the new team, right? The new team will be frustrated and upset, right? And ticked off. Said, guys, we're done, right? You keep finding things. Yeah, we keep finding things because this PR is enormous, right? And one walkthrough isn't enough. So remember to make your PRs as small as possible. They're easy to review. The next one is, but my developers are all backend and do not know UI. Well, that's a problem. That's a problem. Right? This type of analysis needs to be performed before the new team commits to a feature. Right? So it is an exercise that the team will need to undertake with developers, product owner, maybe a representative from another product owner from the host team, right? Maybe an architect. Well, pull in if you like. Go ahead.
Hey, Lee, sorry to interrupt. There's a question.
I do have a question, but I don't want to cut off Lee if you prefer to finish or whatever. A question whenever you want questions. I'm saying, is this a good time, Lee, or do you want me to wait until you're done?
Hey, Lee, is it okay to ask questions now, or would you like to wait until?
Yeah, absolutely. But Khalil, you need to repeat the question because I have a hard time understanding. There's echo.
Oh, okay. There's an echo? Okay.
Is this any better, Lee?
Yes.
Okay. Move forward a few feet. Okay, so let me try to articulate this. I agree that everything you've said for the last half hour is the best way to organize a folio team. It's going to have the most chance of success, right? No question. As you said at the start of the presentation, there are plenty of exceptions to this. There's teams that are building modules that are not to contribute back to the final releases, or folks like myself or individual developers and so forth. But that's not to contradict that all of these things are definitely the best way. And there are certain things like you said about like the 80% test coverage are in fact technical council standard. Like the module won't be accepted if it's not. So 100%. And I also completely agree that it's easy for all of us to listening to this to understand that many teams have failed by not following these instructions, right? We know of stories that, like I know Team Bama, spent a lot of time trying to get to that 80% threshold and being frustrated and so forth, right? So no question that all of this advice comes from experiences where not following this advice was bad and led to problems, right? All that being said, one of the efforts in the community right now is to bring on more developers from smaller institutions and folks who are not necessarily part of teams, or folks who want to be part of teams but new teams. And I wonder about the opposite effect that this advice has in creating this enormous mountain of requirements, that might dissuade new developers. Like your last example, my developers are all backend and don't know UI, or in the case of where I was a couple of years ago, I could contribute some stripes, but not backend. That was okay because I worked with some other developers on a team that did the backend side. right? But I wonder, thinking of the community initiative to try to bring more people on board, if there's a counter side to all of this good advice, which is that if you can't check all these boxes, let's still talk and let's still find ways to bring you on board and figure out, ways, right? Whether it's being part of an existing team or other avenues. And I guess I'll leave it there and see what your thoughts are.
Yes, the short answer to your question is yes. We welcome all developers from all walks of life, right? However, this presentation is targeted towards standing up a new team, right? All right. So if an institution has a developer who can be a part-time student, for example, right, working for the institution, right? This person with a certain commitment, as in this person is available, say 20 hours a week, can join an existing team, right? And learn the process from the masters. All right, there's nothing wrong with that, and by the way, we will welcome such additions, right? So this person will learn the code base, right? Will learn the processes, will learn architecture, but there needs to be a certain level of commitment, right? As in, we're assigning this story to this new person from University of XYZ. Oh, but he is unavailable this week because he's working on something else, right? This will frustrate the host team a lot, right? Because we like to complete our sprint commitments every single time, right? So this scenario is not impossible. I will only welcome the scenario. Then eventually such trained individuals can make up teams, right? So it'll be a lot easier to put people together who are already familiar with the code base, the processes, the DevOps practices, and so forth, right? Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Lee.
Thank you for the question. The last slide is, oh, we did not know next Friday is a feature freeze. Well, on occasions, I noticed that the teams are operating in isolation, right? There's no collaboration. They don't participate in folio-wide meetings, right? In other words, they may not be aware that an important milestone such as feature freeze is coming up. It's right around the corner. It's right there. Another thing is the drive, right? We like to complete our work by the milestones, right? If the team feels, maybe we don't have enough, I don't know, how do you put it? It's our feature, right? We're not bound to, to your schedule and so forth. That is usually not good, right? So everyone should be on the same page. All teams should follow the same schedule. The schedule is available. If you don't know where the schedule lives, well, talk to me. All right, I'll be more than happy to guide you. And we already talked about priorities, right? Especially part-time, right? An institution, ultimately, a part-time student working on a follow project is not a Folio or EBSCO employee, right? They would be an institution employee, right? An institution may say, well, we have a bug in our legacy system and I need you to work on it. So remember, we talked about a certain clear level of commitment. So that's important to remember, that we're all on in the same boat. support feature in production, but we didn't know we had to support this feature in production. Our motto is you built it, you own it, right? Prepare to fix issues in your feature during Bugfest and in production. The team cannot disappear, all right? Let me put it this way, right? Feature completes, the team completes a feature, and the feature is now part of the release, and the team is no more, right? That's bad, right? We need to transition the ownership. Things happen, of course, right? The university no longer employs the students, right? It happens, or no longer willing to participate in folio development. That's fine, but don't just drop off from the face of the earth, right? Let's do a transition, and another team will be responsible for your features. So that is the end of my presentation. Any more questions or comments?
Hi, it's Anne. I have a question. If we could go back to slide 10.
Slide 10.
Yes. Okay. So I'm wondering if we could chat a little bit about this middle bullet point, which is we're not raising pull requests because the feature's not ready. And we could think a little bit about the concept of, I'm wondering if there is a way. And I realize we would need to strike a balance as development teams who need to review pull requests. Is there a way that we could work in conjunction with the team that's creating new code before we get to the point of pull requests? I'm thinking, at the point of the newer development team recognizing that they have some work that they want to contribute, perhaps even sitting in on a refinement session with the team who has to eventually review the code for the pull request, because we've actually encountered, a time with a very conscientious and, team, but at the point of reviewing the pull request, our developers understood that perhaps there could have been a different way to do this particular work. And if we did approve the pull requests, it could cause us some issues moving forward. And they actually had suggestions for that team on, if we were going to do this, we would actually choose to do it this a different way. And so I'm wondering, how could we do this differently from the start so that we don't get ourselves into a position of, we're at the 11th hour, we need to review pull requests. The team, this newer community team, has worked tirelessly on something that then we kind of need to reject, but could have provided guidance before.
Collaboration is a must, right? Especially for a new team, right? The developers from the new team, the product owner, the scrum master, testers, anyone, right, are more than welcome to attend refinements or schedule calls with the host team, right, or pull in an architect, right? We have solution architects, right, who can advise them how to best, what tools to use, what piece of technology to use, how to create a handshake with the existing functionality. Is it through a Kafka queue, or is it an API call, right? So all that, so yeah. Absolutely, right? Especially at the early stages. Please work with the host team at all stages of your development process.
What are your thoughts about using the concept of left testing, like actually shift left testing, shift left with this, so perhaps perhaps even the manual QA on the community team works with the product owner to set up, the design from the very beginning. It's in refinement with both teams so that there are just no surprises. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of some ways that we can have that line of communication open and early.
When we work with the Spitfire team, one of the things we did, first of all, they were basically embedded with us for, I think, 4 sprints.
Okay.
And when they decided to work on a feature on their own, we reviewed the stories together.
Yes.
And Dev lead said,
Yeah.
just like Lee said.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we're in agreement. And then, when they implemented the work, we also reviewed their pull request.
Right.
But at every point in time, we were in agreement.
Yeah.
We were aligned.
Yeah.
But we had that discussion very early where we said, hey, we're gonna work on this. You okay? Yeah, fine. What are you gonna do? We're gonna do this. Okay, well, maybe you should do that. Okay, that's great.
Yes.
So I think it's important to have, especially as, your team owns some pretty big modules, like,
Yes.
serve. To almost, when it's possible, and maybe it's tricky because it's open source, I don't know, almost have like a criteria as to how if you're gonna work in our module, this is how you need to work with us, type of thing.
Yeah, I definitely would advocate for that. I think, just kind of to further elaborate on maybe how we got to the point where it ended up being not the best was, we want to foster an environment where we do accept community development work, right? We have an open source community-based project, and we want as much as possible for everyone to have ownership over the concepts that they want to implement. And I can't speak for others on the team, but we do foster an environment where we want others to have that independence, that they are contributors, they're creating the ideas, and it will flow into this product that we have. And, while I do appreciate that as a concept, I think I've learned through this experience that there's a way to do it like Khalila's suggesting, where you're not binding the other team's capabilities and saying no to the work. It's more like being inclusive and setting this part of the project up for success. In good coordination with the developers who are going to have to approve the work ultimately. So, and I realize Jen has her hand up, but I think I'm learning a lot from this discussion, on recognizing that I need and we can strike a better balance to, allow this independence, but also recognize with independence, there's a lot of interdependence that we have here. And having that start very early, I think is important.
Yes.
I just want to say I totally agree with that. And development teams working with others who are on that team is so important to the community health of the project.
Jen has her hand up. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, my question was mostly just kind of about the process and this sort of host team thing, and whether that's like something new or something that's been ongoing, like in this specific situation that maybe Anne was just talking about, like was the host team thing in place, or is this a newer process? And just kind of wondering if that particular process needs to be built out more.
I'm not sure.
Before Anne or you lead. So, Jen, there's been, three kind of paths to onboard a team. And I'm sure Lee can talk about Team Bama, but I'd like to talk about at least start the situation where Ann was faced. That they were onboarded, or the team that she's referring to was onboarded by not her team, but another team. But they weren't, but it was very quick. It was like, okay, here's everything you know, okay, goodbye, see you later. That's how it was. And so then they started working on features that involved Ann's team, and then Ann, I think you could probably take it from there, what happened there.
Yeah, so, Jen, I really like your question, and actually this presentation that Lee's giving today it's spot on, because we've learned a significant number of lessons through this experience. And so, at the point that the team that I'm working on became involved, it really was supposed to be about accepting work and reviewing pull requests, and that work would be funneled into the pipeline portfolio. And in this particular case, what was also interesting to us, which is very great, is that the team who was contributing the work, this newer community team, also had similar requirements to some other requirements that we had within our own team that would be great to contribute to the community. So it seemed like the stars were aligning, and they really are still. It's just a matter of, we didn't think that we were entering into a relationship of being a host team.
Yeah.
And so we were, just kind of thrust into this position. And I think both teams handled it all admirably, but I can see now, like, how if we had it a little bit differently, if we had it organized like Leah is suggesting here, that everybody would have been set up for success. And so we'll just call we'll call this experience that we ended up having maybe just like a little bit of a beta.
Yeah. And then with the mole team, about a year ago, it was a different situation.
Yeah.
Where again, for about 4 sprints, they were embedded with the Spitfire team, but they were fully staffed, which was a little bit different from the other team.
Yeah.
We had a PO, we had QA, front end, back end development.
Yes.
And they have worked many years together,
Yes.
developing new functionality. So it was a little bit different. So we worked with that team. We refined stories together, things like that. They also helped out with requirements. They actually wrote quite a bit of requirements that we use for mark record validation, for example. And then at some point we said, okay, you ready? And they said, yeah, we're ready. And so they went off on their own, and we still have engagement with them. We still review PRs from time to time. They identify the stories they're going to work on for each release. And, I know and trust that they'll get it done. And that's the relationship we were able to build, but different setup from the setup that the team that Ann worked in, which is different from Team Bama. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess I think you guys I think we're probably close to time. I just want to throw out there that I think I think I've met Ann, but I'm on the technical council, so I'm sort of involved in like the governance aspect. And there's sometimes a lot of pushback about how much we can ask people at the beginning. Like people shouldn't have to come and ask permission. They should be able to just go. So I think there's maybe like with the product council, like some shared interest here and like really talking through what people have planned at the beginning. It sounds like it'd be helpful really on all sides. I won't even say both sides, just everyone.
Yeah, totally. I'm really glad you pointed that out, Jen, because I'm realizing even through this conversation that we're having today, that we probably need to change the narrative around, like, there is a difference between like, you have to tell us what you're going to be doing because we have to identify if that's going to be the best way of doing it, or, kind of this big brother mentality versus, in a community with this type of a product. It works best when we're all, kind of collaborating from the start of something. And so finding a way to kind of support the narrative of collaboration and cohesion over monitoring, I think will be the way that we can, continue to move forward and foster that environment. It will also create far less anxiety for all parties if that's there. Now, I do think that I know that the team that I work with is very ripe to be able to foster this type of collaboration. From what I've seen, other teams within Polio can do that also. We're all very busy people. We all believe in community, this concept of community and open source, and we all appreciate collaborating. I think it will work, but we might just sometimes need to remind those who feel a little bit more inclined toward authority to back away just a little bit if we start to have this, because we wouldn't want newer teams to feel as though they're in handcuffs every time they want to do something. But I definitely can see that, perhaps it's just this narrative change that we need to make, being mindful of not going overboard, but also fostering this from the beginning relationship, this collaboration. So
I just want to add that I think some of this can be addressed or at least mitigated by getting out in front of it and doing additional training, or like emphasizing certain things during that onboarding, right? So, and really placing emphasis on consistency, right? Especially with things like API design is really comes to mind, where, a new developer or a new team might have a preference of specifying an ID as a query parameter, whereas all the other APIs in that domain are specifying the ID as part of the path and the URL, right? And so if you introduce this new API that's completely looks different and behaves different than everything else, it's not helping anyone. And when it comes to reviewing a pull request, the host team is going to say, hang on, we're going to ask you to change this. And something like that is probably pretty minor to change. It's just an example, but I think placing an emphasis on some of the things that the community, that the host team would probably balk at during, say, a PR review, and getting out in front of it and placing an emphasis on those things during the onboarding would probably be helpful. Avoid the situation altogether. But yeah, I agree that collaborate. You're never gonna check all those boxes. You're never gonna avoid all the problems that way. You're gonna need to collaborate, but getting out in front of the most important things, so emphasizing consistency. There's plenty of other examples out there, right? Like there's a ton of APIs, there's a ton of code. Just try to be consistent with what's already there, not doing things in sort of an authentic.
Yeah.
even what you've just said here is leaps and bounds over where we landed at the point of needing to kind of go back on things. It's almost like, this is another reason why it's helpful to foster the collaboration from the beginning, because if the 5 sentences or 10 the paragraph that you just made were said from the very beginning, and then perhaps if the team has a list of things like, these are just things that we all always pay attention to, please be mindful of X, Y, and Z. Immediately, the creation of the work, before it's even reviewed by anyone, when it's still in draft in JIRA, would be set up for better success.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of an example at the extreme end of this. There was a great talk by Spokane Public Library earlier today about a module they developed and a module they're going to develop. I don't know what the process was and whether they interacted with any of the best practices that Lee described, but I'm gonna guess not, because their development process was extremely idiosyncratic. The backend languages they chose to use wouldn't pass muster right now, according to the current officially supported technologies. They could have benefited from a lot of earlier conversation, as Anne was describing, and learning a lot of the best practices that Lee shared. All that being said, I'm glad they did what they did. Even given the difficulties that they will have trying to contribute to the flower release, I would rather they have done it than not done it.
Yeah.
And so it's how do we find that roadmap
Right.
to having this collaborative approach as opposed to a dictatorial approach,
Yeah.
right? So we can still have a public library contributing modules to Folio and having it be a successful method of doing that, even if they don't have a Jira or a Scrum or a Rancher environment or any of the other stuff.
So these guidelines that Craig and you, Maccabee are talking about would be important, right?
Yes.
You know, because, you know, we're coming from it from, oh, this is how we, you know, this is how we work and how we need it to be versus, you know, well, maybe that library implemented something and got something done. But yeah, having those guidelines would be really, important too. We're at time.
Yeah, I feel like we're over time. I've seen several sessions.
Yes.
We are.
We're over time. So Lee, and Jen, thank you, for the presentation. And it sounds like there's more discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lee.
thank you, Lee.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
Thank you, Lee.
Enjoy lunch, guys.
Thank you.
All right.